Hey guys, welcome to the knife shop. I'm Aaron with Aleeknives, and tonight we're going to build a budget-friendly knife. We're not going to use all these high-end tools that I have and that I incorporate in my shop. We're going to use nothing more than an angle grinder, some files, some sandpaper, and some good old-fashioned elbow grease. I'm going to show you how, even if you don't have all these tools, you can even create a high-end knife in your own garage at home. So let's jump right in. Let's start with a piece of 3/16 by 1.5 1084 bar stock. That's a nice thicker stock. There's a reason that I chose this stock. I decided to do a dagger for this build, so I went ahead and drew up a symmetrical dagger. If you guys don't know how to draw a dagger, all you have to do is decide how big your stock is, draw a center line, and you only draw half of the dagger, and then you fold it over, and that makes a perfectly symmetrical template for you. That way both sides will be the same. The reason that I chose to do this design is because after we lay it out, check it out, there's not a ton of material to remove here. Now I decided to use the good old paint method on this one, and I picked up an old can of spray paint, and that's exactly what it was. It didn't spray very well, but it did the trick here. There we go. Now we got a template to work off of. You see almost all knife makers profile their knives with an angle grinder, and that's for a reason. An angle grinder works really well to do this. Put a cutoff wheel in it, go to town, you can cut all these slits and then connect the dots. It's a pretty easy way to remove the excess material. It's way better than going at it with a file. When you work one of these with just a file, it takes a long time and you're going to wear your arm out before you even get to the bevels. Now I'm going to show you a couple new things on this. This is a good way to profile the knife. After you've cut off the majority of it, you want to keep your profile nice and square 90 degrees. This is a good way to hold your blank at 90 degrees to your angle grinder so that you can go ahead and do your profile and try to keep it nice and crispy. I'm going to go ahead and lay out some blue Dykem layout dye on this bad boy because we're going to give it some layout lines. It's incredibly important on a dagger build to give yourself some layout lines so that you can check your symmetry from one side to the other throughout the build cycle. You know, you want to go ahead and give yourself 90-degree lines at the top and bottom so you can check one side to the other. Hey guys, hopefully you're getting some enjoyment out of the video and maybe gaining some knowledge. If you are, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, and after you hit the subscribe button, go down below in the comments and leave me a quick comment saying I subbed, and I'll respond to you down there. Feel free to ask me questions. I always try to answer all the questions down in the comment section, so I look forward to seeing you guys down there. Thanks. Here I'm going to go ahead and pick up one of my favorite round files. I've decided to make these cutouts the size of the file just for ease of building. If you make the cutouts the same size as the file, then you can go ahead and just put your blank in a jig or a vise like this, and you can use the vise jaws to keep you straight from one side to the other. Here you'll see me check my symmetry. To get the shape that I want on the top of my scales, I just looked around the shop until I found something that was the right size circumference that I was looking for. And then I will lay it on here, center it up, and then just scribe a line. Here we go. So that's going to be the shape of my handle scale. Now I can take some measurements on where I want to drill these holes to hold my handle scales on. I've laid out where I would like to see my pins. I've just got this little tiny center punch here. You don't have to punch your holes. I like to, because I want them right where I want them. Ouch. Alright, now I told you I was going to use nothing more than hand tools. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So I just got my hand drill. I went ahead and grabbed the drill bits that are the right size for my pins. And when you come in here, make sure you're straight up and down. Well, shoot. That didn't work out at all. Not even close. Okay, so what I should have done is I should have drilled a pilot hole with a much smaller drill bit, because this larger drill bit walked off my line. the top and the bottom. This one walked a little bit this direction here, and this one walked a little bit that way. Even though I center punched it, I could have used a center drill, which is a much more rigid drill bit, to start the hole. That would have been a really good idea. Obviously, I don't use a hand drill very often, but this is lesson learned. So what I'm going to do to fix this, because I still want my pins to land in this area and this area, is I'm going to drill these out to a larger hole here so that my pin will still fit within it. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just drill these out to a larger hole, and then we're going to also drill some weight reducing holes in this tang. And there we go. I'm not too fussed about these not being straight. In fact, I didn't even try to align these. I just shotgun hold these in because it doesn't matter where they go. Just as long as they're relatively in the center. You're not going to feel a weight balance difference between left and right on that. We need to scribe the center line on the cutting edge that we're going to grind all the bevels down to, so that we get a nice straight cutting edge and it doesn't wander or wave. I just like to use a drill bit. One thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to select a drill bit that is slightly smaller than the thickness of the blade. And you do that because you don't want to scribe a line right down the center. You want to scribe parallel lines that leave about the thickness of a nickel or a dime in the middle, preferably a nickel. I like to leave a nice fair amount of material just to make sure that before heat treat that I have plenty of material left to fix problems if I have any warps or anything like that. I have found when you're using the drill bit method, don't rotate the drill bit. Hold it in your hand. That way you keep the point, just in case the point wanders slightly, you keep the point in the exact same place and you can scribe your lines. There we go. See how thick I left that? I left that pretty thick. And that's good. Well, I thought this was a good idea all the way until it wasn't. You'll see. Alright, so the first thing that I tried was to put my grinder in the vise like this, and I put a flap wheel in it, and I approached it like I would normally approach my 2x72 grinder, like so, where I was trying to grind my bevels like this. And what that was giving me with the flap wheel was a convex grind. And I really wanted more of a flat grind, so I replaced the flap disc with a grinding wheel, and I came across. And that actually was producing some pretty crisp lines for me, but the problem that I was running into was the hub in the center stands out a little taller than the disc. So in order for me to get a flat grind, I'd have to come underneath the hub. And I wasn't able to get all the way in the ricasso area of my blade. So I determined that I didn't like that method either. So what I did was this. In about less than 5 minutes, I set up a file jig. This is so simple, guys. Look how easy this premise is. All I did was I took a file and I attached it to a rod with some hose clamps. I put some duct tape on this side around the hose clamp so it won't hurt me. I screwed the knife to the bench right here. I decided what angle I wanted to put it at, and I put a couple boards there, and that's it. I mean, so simple. Let me show you how easy this is to work. This is a really effective method for doing this. This is quite enjoyable, guys. I forgot how much I enjoyed this process. You know, I set myself up a nice seat here. It's not loud like the machines are. You don't have a lot of vibration. You know, this actually lays out your lines for you, so you get really crisp lines. And I enjoy this. Look how even that bevel's coming out. Already, just spot on. Okay, so this is my second bevel done. you'll see I screwed the knife down. I put a stop here so the blade can't move, and I put a stop here so that I have a place to stop right here. Now this isn't where my bevel will end. I put a stop here to rough in all 4 bevels. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this line right here and I'm going to feather it into this guard area so it'll come right out of the guard and into the bevel. Right there in this gentle swoop on both sides. But I'm not going to cut that in yet. When it comes to filing in bevels, I think the important part is to make yourself comfortable. Set up your filing jig, get yourself a nice seat right here, and just get into a nice comfortable position. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of pressure. It just takes the movement of letting the file do the work, remove the material, and just let it go. You know, a lot of times I'll turn on some music. I will tell you, this has already cost me a candy bar and a bag of Skittles, and I still have one more bevel left. I did jump into doing a dagger, so there's 4 bevels to grind, and these are tall flat grinds also. So this is a labor-intensive build to do this way, but for a dagger, getting all these bevels to line up, this is probably the easiest way to get accurate bevels to all line up symmetrically, is to put it in a jig and file these out, because you get these just perfectly crisp lines at the top of the bevels and down the center ridge. And I'm going to show you, after I get this bevel cut in, I'm going to show you what that looks like, because it does come out just perfect. There it is, guys. Now, what I did decide is that I'd like to take this cutting edge here down a little bit thinner before heat treatment and get it a little closer to final dimensions. So I want you to see how I set this up. I just have a sled here, and on my sled I just I clamped this down to the table so this doesn't move, and then I took these 2 boards and I clamped those down on top to get the angle that I wanted. Now, if I want to thin out my cutting edge, I have to steepen my angle. All I have to do is move these boards slightly closer, and that'll raise this and steepen my angle. It's very simple, guys. This is, you know, you could set one of these up without actually making anything. It's just a couple boards laying around. There's literally no thought to build this setup right here. You guys could build this incredibly easy. I guarantee you don't even have to have these boards. You could use miscellaneous materials laying around in your shop to create a beveling jig. So all I have to do now is just loosen the clamp on this side, move those boards forward. I'll probably put a little mark there so I know how far forward I moved it. And then what will happen is when I start filing, material will come off the edge and I'll see a new line on this bevel, and I'll file it until that line moves up to right there at the top. And then I'm going to come in and clean out these corners that I talked about right here. I'll show you how I clean those up to get this radius, and then I'll go ahead and sand this out before heat treatment. Alright, let me show you how I do this inside corner. So now I took out my stop there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start taking that tip out. Now, that's as far as I'll take it with this rough cut file. Then I'll come in here and I'll clean this up with the same file with 220 grit sandpaper wrapped around it, and I'll be able to clean this bevel up completely. I'll flip it over, I'll do all 4 sides like this to make them match up and be equidistant from the center line here, so I can get this nice perfect bevel line that I'm looking for that sweeps right out of this little cutout that I did on each side of the blade. This bevel here is now sanded to 220, and you can see the sandpaper, to get it sanded from rough ground to 220, brought me closer to my center line. That's why I left this much room between my bevel and the center line, because I knew sanding would bring me closer to that line. And then after heat treatment, when I go ahead and finish sand this, I'm going to try to get a nice perfect ridge that comes up to a point and has a ridge right down the center of the dagger. So also, when I hand sanded this, my tip slid over just a little bit. This ridge line slid over just a little bit from the tip. And that's also expected because I haven't sanded this side. And when I sand this side, I will true that ridge back up to right to the center of the tip. Oh yeah. 220. Both sides starting to come together. Just in case you guys wonder how much sandpaper I use, there's a pile, but that's how much it took to sand out the 4 bevels. Just the pre-sand with the 220 grit. That's a lot of paper, and that's probably the largest expense in the knife shop is the sandpaper. I think a lot of you guys can understand and appreciate the fact that this build will take longer than one of my normal builds. I'm not using any of my high-end fancy machinery back here. We're doing it all with hand tools. So this is going to be a 2-part series, and in the next part I'm going to teach you guys how to heat treat the blade and handle it up and get all that stuff done using these simple hand tools. So next week will be part 2. In the meantime, if it's not out yet, you can always go and click this video right up here and go watch some of my other builds. Thanks guys.